Hi, so my name is Rush Bartlett. I'm a PhD student in biomedical engineering at Purdue University, and I'm also an MBA student through Kelley Direct program at Indiana University. Today, I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Glucago LLC. My 2 other business partners could not be here today with me. One's in China, and one's doing a research symposium. But we have developed the next generation and a disruptive technology platform for the injection of medical products. Now, our advantages of our system include no refrigeration required. Any untrained person can use our device. And we have a very versatile platform which can be used with proteins, vaccines, peptides, cancer therapeutics, nanoparticle delivery, you name it, we can put it in our product and it will help prevent that refrigeration problem. So the drugs that can fit in our product comprise a $350 billion global market. These are injectable drug compounds only. That is 54% of the overall drug market, the largest segment of which is the protein drugs, which is $160 billion. Now, the problems in this overall drug delivery market, is most of us are familiar with, is that it takes a long time to get these products to market, typically 12 to 15 years. It takes $1 billion to get them through FDA approval, and the risk is about a 1 in 10,000 chance of a preclinical compound actually being a blockbuster, which makes the pharmaceutical companies money. So that results in a 5 to 8 year window in your patent life to gain back that $1 billion investment, plus extra returns. So the way that pharma companies leverage that risk is with drug delivery systems. So they patent a drug delivery system that gives them more life on their drug compound, exclusivity in the market. And we fall into that parental or through the through the skin pathway, which is a $40 billion market. Now this is where our device truly falls, and it's growing at a 10.4% rate annually. Now these systems comprise syringes, prefilled syringes, and auto-injectors. They all have one thing in common. They only inject a liquid drug. There's no solid drug compound that's mixed. They only do liquids, and they are used in a variety of different drug applications. Now, our device falls into the category of a reconstitution device. This is a category where a liquid drug compound is mixed with a solid drug compound, and then it's injected into the body. Now, currently, as you can see, these devices are not really user-friendly. They're nothing more than a guide for the needle to puncture into an existing vial, resuspend the liquid, pull the fluid out of the vial, and then into the patient. But the standard of care in this market is traditionally a prefilled syringe system, like the one I'm going to pass out. This is for diabetics for glucagon rescue. The diabetic, when they're passed out, will have to mix those 2 components together and give themselves an intramuscular injection. So most likely someone who's not trained will be giving this injection. I don't know about you, but I've never given anyone an injection before, and I don't want to have to with a giant needle like that. So the problems in the drug delivery market, as I mentioned, is that the devices are not easy to use, but also the reason why you have to inject these compounds and you can't go through the oral pathway is because the compounds themselves are large, they're bulky, they can't get absorbed by the intestines, and a lot of them, because they are large, are prone to degradation. Now the delivery mechanisms are, you can see for yourself, but the shipping complexity is really where we are kind of leveraging that ease of use with removal of the refrigeration aspect. And with our product, we truly eliminate that. So we see this as a tremendous market opportunity. Now what we've got for you is a one-step inject solution to this problem. Remove the cap, causes the compounds to mix, press at the site of injection, the needle goes out, needle retracts, and it locks in place. So you never see the needle. It's very easy to use, compact, and again, this is just a preliminary prototype. We're working with a company in Indianapolis to get final manufacturability designs. As you can see from that device, there's a 2-chambered system, which allows our drug to be in a lyophilized or freeze-dried form. If you remove the water from a drug, it's stable for up to a year on the shelf at room temperature, compared to a less than 24-hour period if it's in this solution. Our device is also not spring-loaded. The EpiPen, which is not a competitor because it only injects a liquid drug, is a spring-loaded mechanism, and medical professionals demonstrating the use of this for their patient for training purposes have self-injected themselves into the thumb about 16% of the time. Their thumb turns blue, not a good situation. We wanted to make our device safe, simple, and easy to use. Now we've got a couple of videos. Hopefully it doesn't crash on me like it did yesterday, but we use Kool-Aid to simulate the mixing and injection in this particular process because it is in a white powder form until it immediately interacts with the liquid, which turns it red. Provides a great visual example. This simulates removal of the cap, causing our patented mixing technology to occur. Now this is the final video of our functional prototype, simulating an intramuscular injection with an apple. You simply remove the cap and then compress the device into the site of injection. And then you can see that the needle punctures through the apple and injects the mixed fluid. And then the sheath comes back over, so you actually never see the needle when you're using it. Now, we've identified several initial target markets for this device. Glucagon Rescue, which replaces that kit. Snake antivenom therapies. If a camper wants to carry an antivenom with them, they get bit by a rattlesnake. This happens to 8,000 people every year in a $30 million market, or a 30 million person market. Now, if they carry this with them and they get an injection of this antivenom within 10 minutes of being bitten by a snake, it reduces the cost of a snake bite attack from $150,000 to $50,000 in medical expenses. Now, as far as heart attacks, if you take aspirin, which we all know aspirin is a great way to help remove the risk of death from a heart attack, if you take that pill, it causes about 35 to 45-minute delay by the time that pill gets into your system and raises your blood aspirin levels. Now, if you take an injection, your maximum aspirin concentration within your blood takes place in about 5 minutes or less. As far as vaccination in developing countries, you take our product, you ship it into Nigeria, Somalia, Cambodia, you name it. They don't have the infrastructure to get vaccines into those places. There's no refrigeration there. So if you can put our product with vaccines, that means that you can get more people vaccinated and potentially save up to 5 million children from dying every year because they don't get a vaccine from a life-saving treatment. Also looking to another market, very different from vaccines and humanitarian work, is the combat market. Now, if you're a field medic and you're getting shot at, you don't want to be mixing a powder solution and getting all this done to save your buddy's life who's been shot or been exposed to a biological weapon or a chemical weapon. You want to be able to take that antibiotic or antitoxin, just jab it in, get it and go. So moving back to the glucagon market, I'm going to focus a little bit more on that just for the simplest explanation for particular how we're going to get to market. So again, standard of care, it's not easy to use. It's just a syringe that has to be mixed. There's two manufacturers, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, and glucagon is used with Bedford Labs. I've talked to a couple of school nurses who said that they've tried to use this kit and it's punctured their own thumb, it's hit the metal ring on that vial and bent the needle, causing it to be useless, or they've gotten all the process up to that point and they've pulled the solution out and then the stopper comes out of the back, you lose all your drug. So the US diabetes market itself, for that particular device only, is about 20 million people. Type 1 diabetics are at the largest risk of having a severe hypoglycemic attack requiring the injection of that kit. Now, this is not to say that it's the standard, once or twice a week where they feel woozy and they take a pill for a sugar pill or drink some orange juice. This happens once a year on average where they require the intervention of someone else to save their life. And it's typically done with that product right there. Now, type 2 diabetics, depending on their medication regimen, are a little bit different animal. So if you're on insulin and you're a type 2 diabetic, or if you're on sulfonylurea medication, which comprises about 2/3 of that market, typically the older of the type 2 diabetic population, you're at a substantially increased risk for a hypoglycemic attack than the metformin category, which is about 3 to 4% of those patients actually have a severe hypoglycemic attack, primarily because they've just started the medication, they've just become aware that they're type 2 diabetic, but once they get older, they move up to those heavyweight medications. Now, drugs like glucagon and all those other drugs I mentioned previously, Crofab, antivenom, for instance, they're all covered by reimbursement already. There are approved drugs already. They're on the formularies. They got their own codes. We're not changing that. Our product is only $1 to $2 to manufacture. We're just making it easier to use, easier to store, and removing that refrigeration infrastructure cost. Now, as far as intellectual property, before committing 30 grand of my own personal money with my two business partners to get the rapid prototyping and design work, and I can pass this out later. It's got our technical designs, engineering drawings. We decided it would be prudent to do a prior art search. So we did that unbiased prior art search with Chicago-based law firm Miller Matheson Hull, which then resulted in filing of 3 provisional patents on the technical designs of that process and the designs of the unit, which are fairly broad, which rolled into a PCT application which was filed last Tuesday. Now, as far as regulatory, you may think this is the device, and you would be right, but the FDA views it as a drug. Now, it's not to say that we need the scary $1 billion regulatory pathway that takes 15 years. No, we need a very small subsection of that called the drug container approval process, which follows under the drug regulation. But drug container approval only means that we have to prove that a pre-existing drug is stable in our container. That means that we just have to do some preliminary mechanical testing and some drug stability testing in our device, which takes less than a year and less than $1 million on average. And then after that, we just need to maintain that whoever's going to manufacture our device, because we are going to sub-license this, we're not going to make it ourselves, is going to be under those GMP regulations and manufacturing controls. So we've come a long way in a year. We've conceived of the idea and started the company in 2009. We did the prototype production with Rose-Hulman Ventures program. We filed a PCT application, and now we're moving towards manufacturability testing for 1,000 to 10,000 units with a company in Indianapolis. Now, after that, we're moving to animal and benchtop testing. It's important to note that we don't need animal testing for our approval process. The only reason we're doing this is because a professor at the University of Indiana Medical Center has caught wind of our technology and really wants to do a peer-reviewed publication and study on the device, which we think would be a great aspect from a marketing perspective and at no cost to us other than supplying of the devices. So that leads us to our possible first sub-license deadline this fall, which this is based on a benchmark from IntelliJect, which is a company that developed an EpiPen that talks you through the actions of injecting yourself with an EpiPen. So it's a little bit different than us, but it's the same type of model. They were able to execute an agreement for $25 million up front and $205 million in possible milestone payments with a tiered double-digit royalty on sales with Sanofi Aventis. And this was all done prior to any FDA approval of their product. That leads us to potentially partnering and then FDA approval after that time period, and then first product sale in 2012. So what we're seeking is $2.1 million for a 45% equity stake to get us to that sub-licensing milestone. That gives us operations through year 2 and an FDA approval if we can't find a sub-licensing partner within the next year. So that gives you an anticipated return on investment of 8.7 times your investment. So what we're going to do is we're going to utilize those partnerships. We're going to use their existing manufacturing. We're going to leverage all the risk of the FDA trials onto them, and we're going to use their pre-existing distribution and marketing and sales pipelines because they already make the drug, they already sell the drug. All we're going to do is put it in a product that's going to extend their patent exclusivity, and it's going to make it easier for patients to use it. So as far as partnerships, we've been working with the Rose-Hulman Ventures, as I mentioned, for prototyping, and we've executed confidentiality agreements with many of these companies of whom I'm talking: drug fillers, pharmaceutical companies, medical device manufacturers, and philanthropic organizations around the country. We've also licensed the technology from Purdue. We were students when we developed it, which means that idea conception means that Purdue owns it. However, we developed the bulk of this outside of Purdue, and so there was a little discussion of who owns what. And at the end of the day, we decided a win-win situation resulted in a 2.5% royalty on net sales, no milestone diligence payments, no minimum annual royalties, and I think overall a very, very competitive agreement. So we have a bunch of exit prospects, as you can see here. Many of the large pharmaceutical companies would love to get their hands on this for a specific application only. We're not going to license the technology only to Abbott to use in any of their drugs. We're going to say, okay, Abbott, you just acquired Solvay Pharmaceuticals. You want to use our device for the new malaria vaccine that you're developing? Great, that's awesome. You can use our device for that, but we're not going to let you use that for Biaxin or another type of drug. Also for PATH is a program for appropriate technology in health. They work with the Gates Foundation and the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. We've been talking with them about getting our device into their trial pathway to ship that into those developing countries where they really need it. And then Becton Dickinson, Vetter, or West Pharmaceuticals, huge syringe manufacturers. They'd love to get their hands on this, and they're probably our acquisition targets in the future. So as far as my management team, myself, I'm the managing director. Right now, we're looking for an experienced CEO because obviously we need someone with pharmaceutical contacts in order to leverage that into the playing field to get our device into their products pipeline. But I'm a PhD candidate again. I've got the biomedical background. I've got a chemical engineering degree. I know the technical aspect very well, and because I didn't know the business aspect, I decided, hey, what the heck, I'll go get a business degree too. My two buddies, one of them has got 5 years of translational research experience with biomedical devices specifically, and the other one is got marketing and sales experience with Roche Diagnostics in Indianapolis. As far as our advisory team, it's very extensive. We've got a couple of MBAs from Harvard. We've got PhDs, professors, medical providers, a lot of industrial support, and doctors who've really been encouraged by this practice. A lot of these advisors I can't actually list because we're on confidentiality with those companies. So if you want to contact us, you can visit our website, which hasn't been updated in a while, but it will be next week, and or you can email us at info@glucago.com.
We will now be starting our 20-minute Q&A session. Questions will be asked by each judge, one question at a time with no follow-up. And questions will begin with Kay Matherly.
Oh, okay. So in your revised income statement and projections,
yep.
What have you done here to revise it? Can you
Really, I'm not sure what business plan you guys got, but in the, if those are the same as the business plan you see, then they are, yeah, those are the old financials. Those are revenue statements, just very broad overview, brush strokes. We really hashed into the details into those financial statements that I handed out today. They're detail-oriented. They go through the process of sublicensing, and really it's based on a sublicense agreement that is 1/10 of the value that the IntelliJect product got. We anticipate a $3 million upfront payment instead of a $25 million payment, just to be very conservative. And that's where that 8.7 number comes from.
And where did you get your manufacturing expense information?
That was from quotes from some of the companies that we're under confidentiality agreements with.
So what is the, are there any competitors with a wet-dry auto-injector?
There is 2 competitors. The DuoJect products, which are those products that I showed up on the screen, which are, it's just a giant syringe that fits over a vial and you twist it, and then you pump it up and down. And then there's another one called Vetter. Now Vetter, what they have is a dual-chambered syringe. Now this is not really a competitor to ours. It's aimed at increasing ease of use and not having to manually mix the products. But the problem with their device is they use a rubber stopper that moves up and down and activates a bypass loop for the water to flow around. Now what happens here is that under temperature fluctuations, the rubber stopper expands and contracts differently than the surrounding environment, causing it to leak, which means that it's not FDA approved to be stored without refrigeration. So there's a drug on the market called the PEG Intron Ready Pen, and even though the drug is in a solid form, there's a lot of people that say it failed, and there's a lot of discussion about the FDA not allowing it to be stored outside of the fridge.
So one other follow-up question. You're essentially in the fire extinguisher business, kind of, right? How long is this stable?
The drug compound?
Yeah.
The drug compound is stable for as long as you keep the water out of it. The FDA only allows most lyophilized compounds to be stable for a year, but I've got a packet of astronaut ice cream here that I bought when I was in 4th grade, and it doesn't expire for a couple more years. And this is a lyophilized product.
So my question is, how do you get to the market size? Because if this is stable for 4 or 5 years, and it's probably rarely used, you're
so
basically
it's those
depending on outdate.
repeat purchases every year. So the FDA only allows it to be stable for a year. The drug compound itself, you could bump, to be more stable if you were doing a research application, perhaps. But as far as a medical application that's going to require repeat prescription dosage, they require that you get a new prescription every year of this product. So it's a repeat process every year.
And do you think you'll have any sort of mechanical issues with the spring or anything that's inside of there?
So we've tried to design for manufacturability so that this is easy to manufacture as well as easy to use. And we've got an engineering team right now with the company that we're doing that next step of testing to really hash out the mechanical efficacy of our device and find those little niche problems that might occur. We haven't had any of those things occur right now. That's not to say that they won't occur in the future, but we are looking to mitigate that risk.
You mentioned the Department of Defense. Have you contacted anybody there? Have they had any interest in this or in funding?
We have not specifically contacted the Department of Defense, but we have contacted some people who know how to get at that money, and we are working towards sending in a grant for that process. The problem with them is that with like SBIR and the NIH, it's a slow process. It takes a couple, it takes almost a year to get that money back. And so we are pursuing that, but we are cautiously pursuing that. It's not all eggs are not in that basket.
As a follow-up, there are many organizations that are in the business of delivering health care to third world nations.
Yep.
PATH and...
Yeah, we have a confidentiality agreement with PATH. So we've been discussing with them quite a lot over the past few weeks. I actually have a meeting with them in Seattle in April.
What is the biggest obstacle you see from, in your timeline, break even, you had roughly 2 years to a break even period, 2.5 years.
The biggest obstacle is getting a company to sublicense the product, which is why that CEO position is really critical. And that's why we're going out to find someone with 15 plus years of pharmaceutical experience at the top, so they can call their buddies, they can call their friends, say, hey, we've got a really good product that's going to boost the penetration into your markets or generate a premium pricing opportunity, and give you more patent exclusivity on a dosage form. And so that's really the key obstacle to this.
Okay, and the question I have is the mixing of the Kool-Aid is one thing, and that was a very nice example. How about the dosing in this apparatus? How do you control that, and what testing has been
So
done with
glucagon
that?
specifically itself, there's never been a recorded overdose. So you can inject as much as you want, because what the protein does is it goes to the liver and it causes your body to release its own stored glucose. The snake antibodies that I mentioned, the CroFab, again, it's another application where overdose is not an issue. Underdosing is an issue. Vaccines, overdosing is not an issue. Underdosing is an issue. So those particular markets are the ones we targeted first. Now moving to particular applications that might require a more specified dose, we've got some technical innovations in the process where you can modify that dose by the standard clicker mechanism that most of the pen applications use.
Okay. And just a curiosity thing. You said $50,000 on a steak treatment, even if you get there within 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Versus 150?
Yeah.
So you get bit by a snake, you're in trouble.
ICU is very expensive.
All right, I just wanted to.
Yeah, it's mostly the hospital bills.
Seems like a
The actual treatment and drugs and materials is not that much, but it's going to the ICU and getting that intensive care is very, very expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Brigitte, am I right? It seems like you need about $2.5 million
Yep.
to hit these numbers. That's all the capital you'll need. And then the end of year 4, you're going to net about $10 million. So to hit the IRR that you were talking about, or even the multiple return, you'd be selling the business for about 3 times cash flow. Where did you come up with that comp?
Have you seen the new financial estimates?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Okay.
Because you said you're gonna cash flow about $13 million at the end of year 4.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that would just put a valuation, and based on you wanted to make like a 9x, and the post after the capital was 5, so it's $45 million.
Yeah. So that's
So
the.
you're about 3 times cash flow.
Let me take a look at that real quick. That's the income after
sorry.
year 5.
Pardon?
For which part?
Yeah, no, it was, well, here, my glasses on. It was right here. So that's what you're going to cash flow at the end of year 4.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're going to sell the business for $45 million, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to sell it for about 3 times cash flow.
We anticipate a 3 to 5 times cash flow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question I had.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? How you came up with that
So
metric?
that's really just a conservative
I mean,
estimate.
to me, it
based-
seems very low, but that's just I don't know anything
Yeah,
about it.
again, we tried to make those numbers as conservative as possible so that if anything, in front of judges or venture capitals or angels, they can say, well, there's more opportunity here. And again, it's hard to, put numbers on the board that are, billions of dollars worth of, products being sold and sub-licensing revenues. So that's why we made that.
Yeah.
Now, the
My question is really kind of turning to comparable.
comparable?
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean that's really what it is. I mean,
So we've been
for a
looking-
product like this and with the ramp that you would have had, and all, would you sell it? What is a fair multiple
we
on
think
cash
a
flow?
5 to 7 times multiple is fair based
Okay.
on the research that we've done. Vetter acquired their products from, I forget the name of the company, which is that dual-chambered mixing syringe
Uh-huh.
for 6 times multiple on their cash flow. But that was cash flow based on sub-licensing income. And I don't remember the exact sub-licensing income from them, but for IntelliJect, their sub-licensing income is $25 million up front plus $205 million over the next 10 years in milestone payments, plus royalties on sales of the pharmaceutical company that they sub-license to. So that's how we came up with the numbers
Okay.
that are done.
And then just one final question is, and you're probably not going to know this because it sounds like you're going to hire a CEO that would know this. Talk to me about your sales organization.
Sales organization is going to be targeted towards pharmaceutical companies only. We're not going to be targeting towards, the clinics, or we're not going to target the drug device manufacturers, because a lot of these big pharma companies like Lilly and Abbott and Pfizer, they contract out the development and the production of their injector pens. I know Lilly specifically has a medical device division for their Humalog injection pens for insulin of like 10 people. And a huge company, and that's one of their biggest products. What they do is they subcontract that out to a manufacturer. So that's why we're really targeting those pharma companies with a CEO and maybe 1 or 2 more people as our progression gets further.
Thank you.
Just one follow-up question that has to deal with the bench strength also. Seems that your partners aren't here, and they're probably doing some really exciting stuff. You said in China or wherever.
Yeah.
And you seem to be well-versed in every aspect of the business. But talk to me a little bit about your recruiting process and the time. The CEO it takes a long time to get a CEO.
Yeah.
What other positions are you looking for, and how does that affect your timeline?
So we're also looking for a CFO, but that's a process that's going to take place a little bit later than obviously hiring the CEO. So right now we've initiated the search. We have interviews with 2 candidates next week and the week after that. 1 candidate each week, not 2 candidates each week. And it's just like you said, it's a slow process. We're going through the motions. We've been contacted by a couple of headhunters at Purdue who've heard about us, and they've got candidates who they want us to interview. And it's really just a slow process. We get the team together, we figure out who's got the best tool set to get our product to market.
Okay, thank you.
Who else is working on this? Are there any other patents that are out there at the moment, or any other companies you know that are?
Not for this particular concept. The thing that makes our device novel, as opposed to that Vetter, rubber thing that moves up and down, which is the bulk of the IP that's out there, is we have a solid barrier between the lyophilized product and the liquid. Now, the solid barrier means that there's no way that the water can penetrate that or go around it or get through it. And the way we got that solid barrier in there is by going through the needle as the mechanism to activate that, because there's no additional hole or opening or seal within the device, because that needle opening already exists. So it's very elegant, very simple design.
So tell me about your backup plan if you can't sub-license.
So if you can't sub-license, that's why we're asking for $2.1 million, and that'll get us through FDA approval for one particular drug application, which essentially eliminates the risk of having to sub-license from a pharma company, and we think it would be much more attractive at that point to then go forward. But I mentioned IntelliJect, they sub-licensed before FDA approval even came about for their product, so we believe it's a very competitive strategy.
Can you tell me a little bit about the manufacturability of this? Does this have to be done under sterile conditions?
So the whole device itself does not have to be done under sterile conditions. What that has to do is it's manufactured, the outer housing, and then that's shipped to the pharma company, who then sterilizes it with their existing sterilization equipment. And then the drug container aspect of this, again, it's the technical nature. I can't really go too much into detail of how we've designed this to work. But it's essentially just dropped in there and it's ready to go. So the pharma company sterilizes, they've got their container and their lyophilization unit. It goes through the lyophilization unit. They've got the medical syringe, if you will, of our product, manufactured at the medical device contract manufacturer, shipped to the pharma company. That product is dropped in there aseptically after this device has been sterilized, and then it's packed, it's sealed on the top, sent out for existing distribution network.
So you're not disrupting the manufacturing?
No, not disrupting manufacturing. That was one of the key design principles about creating this device that we got feedback from those pharma companies. Is we went to them early and we said, we've got this idea, what would you like to see? And they said, we want a device that's not going to cost us $20 million to change our manufacturing process.
I see a spring in there. How does it work? You actually pushing manually? You push the diluent into the lyophilized and then out?
So it's a little bit less complex than that. The spring is only there to retract the needle.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have any mechanism of the mixing at all. That's only there for a safety aspect, so that you don't move it or just make it so that anyone can use it.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank our judges for their questions.
Thank you.
And congratulate our team on an excellent presentation.